walls of Jericho. He marched with a spear in his hand. Go blow them ram horns, Joshua cried, 'cause the battle is in my hand. Joshua shoots the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua shoots the battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. Then the ram sheep's horns began to blow, trumpets began to sound. Joshua commanded the children to shout, and the walls came tumbling down. That morning, Joshua took the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua took the battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down.
Story time with Blesso and Leah, Joshua and walls of Jericho.
When the people of Israel entered the land of Canaan, Joshua was their leader, a man chosen by God, who had commanded, "Look, I have set the land before you. Go in and possess it."
Canaan was a good land flowing with milk and honey. But this beautiful land was filled with the wickedness of the Canaanite people who lived there. In cities like Jericho, people worshipped evil and magic and sacrificed their children to idols. God said these things were abominations and the people who did them must be driven from the land. That was to be Joshua's task, and it was a tremendous challenge.
Joshua had God's promise, "I was with Moses, so I will be with you. Be strong and very courageous." So Joshua, at God's command, led his people to the plains of Jericho.
Great city of Jericho shut its gates when the inhabitants heard the Israelites were approaching. They were afraid of these people and hated their miracle-working God. But instead of changing their ways, Jericho people too resist. They gathered together their weapons and got ready for war. Day and night, the men of war kept watch from the top of the walls that surrounded the city.
Nearby the city of Jericho, Joshua looked at the walls, so tall and thick and strong. He knew no human power could break them down. Joshua remembered Jesus had said, "No one will be able to stand before you all the days of your life." And as Joshua looked to the Lord for help, a strange thing happened.
There stood a man with a sword drawn in his hand. And when Joshua asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" the man said, "I am the captain of the army of the Lord. Take your shoes off, for the place where you are standing is holy."
Joshua obeyed with humble worship, and he listened carefully to all the instruction that God gave him. When Joshua returned to the camp, he called together his men. These men of Israel had sworn to obey Joshua as they had Moses.
But as they listened to Joshua's orders, the men of Israel realized that obedience would test not only their loyalty to the leader, but their faith in the Lord as well. Surely no soldiers ever heard orders such as Joshua's men heard from their leader, but the men were encouraged when Joshua told them,
The Lord said the walls of Jericho would fall down flat. Every man would go straight into the city. So the men of Israel prepared to obey. Inside the wall of Jericho, the alarm suddenly rang out, "The Israelites are coming." To the walls, they shouted as every man hurried to his place.
From the top of the wall, Jericho's men of war watched tensely as the Israelites approached. First came armed men, then something that looked very strange in the ranks of an army. 7 priests were blowing their trumpets continually, and following them, a mysterious object was hidden beneath rich blue coverings. What could it be?
Only the people of Israel knew it was the ark of the Lord, and it was there to remind them that the Lord went before them and victory was in the Lord. Strange as it seems, all the Israelites did was to march around the city in a quiet and peaceful way. Not a single word was spoken. The only sounds to be heard were the steady tramp of the marching feet and the endless blast of the priest's trumpets.
People of Jericho just stood still and watched in amazement as the long column of Israelites disappeared among the hills and returned to their camp. Jericho's fighting men were troubled and uneasy. What could it mean? Was it a trick of some kind? On the second day, the Israelites did exactly the same thing as they had done the day before. The priest carried the ark of the Lord around the city, 7 priests always blowing their trumpet before it, and armed men marching in front and the rear. Israelites marched once around the city, then returned to camp without anyone saying a single word. Every day for 6 days, the same thing happened. And every day the people of Jericho watched and waited.
Some were still fearful and troubled, remembering the things they had heard about the Israelites' Almighty God. Others began to mock these foolish Israelites marching around and around the strong walls of Jericho, blowing their trumpets and carrying a mysterious box. Anyone could see they never get into the city that way. On the morning of the 7th day, the Israelites marched around the city as before. But then, instead of returning to their camp, they marched around a second time, and then again and again and again. 7 times the Israelites marched around the city. At the end of the 7th time, every man stopped and faced the wall, completely surrounding the city of Jericho.
And suddenly the trumpets stopped. Every man waited for the Lord's appointed signal. Long blast of the trumpets. Then Joshua cried, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city."
And while the people of Jericho looked on, not knowing that their end had come, people of Israel raised a great shout of victory, and the walls of the city fell down flat. The Israelites went straight in to attack the city, just as the Lord said, and they utterly destroyed all the evil that was in the city, as God commanded. After that time, whenever they went in the promised land, the Israelites had victory as long as they had faith in the Lord and obeyed commands. God promised a life of victory for Christians on the same condition: have faith in Lord, obey His commands, be strong and very courageous.
Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the walls came a-tumbling down. You may talk about your man of Gideon, you may talk about the man of Saul, but there's none like good old Joshua at the battle of Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the walls came a-tumbling down. Right up to the walls of Jericho, they marched with spears in hand. Come blow them ram horns, Joshua cried, 'cause the battle is in our hands. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the walls came a-tumbling down. Then the land ram sheep horns began to blow, and the trumpets began to sound. Joshua told the children to shout that morning, and the walls came a-tumbling down. Joshua fought the battle of